Good morning, everyone. So thank you very much for joining us. First things first, I'm just going to make sure that everyone can hear me. So maybe you could give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you can hear me. Anyone? Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Wamboy. All right, so karibu sana. My name is Mel. I am the community manager here at Nairobi Garage in Kilimani, and we want to welcome you to this workshop. It's a workshop about tapping into market opportunities to grow your business. Before we get to that, I'll just like to give you a brief about Nairobi Garage. So we are a business integration hub. We have four different spaces here in Nairobi, and we'll be opening our fourth one actually next month. So you're welcome to join us over at Delta. I'm currently seated in our Kilimani location. We also have one in Karen as well as Spring Valley. We also are able to offer functional and flexible workspaces for anyone who wants to join us and be part of our community. So these workshops that we have and are running currently, we run every Tuesday, early hours as now, and we basically want to equip our members with skills and different bits of information that are current and valuable to different businesses. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's joining us. I can see all the thumbs up. Asante sana. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. So his name is Edward Ndegwa. He's our member here at Kilimani, and he's the CEO and facilitator of Smart Sales Kenya. He's basically been in the workforce for about 20 years, and he will be giving us insight as to how to identify new opportunities within markets, different markets, as well as boost and tap into our sales abilities. I think this is vital for everyone, and it's the kind of workshop that pretty much most people who are in business or working for a business would be able to benefit from. And so we welcome you to interact with us as much as you can. Just a little bit of housekeeping though. So on the right side of your screen, we have an area where you can chat with us. So that's in the first column. In the next one, we have a questions tab, sorry. So you'll be able to put in all the questions that you have for us, all right? So any questions you have as we go along, please feel free to populate. We also have some polls that are currently running. So one you should be able to answer immediately, and the other as we go along. So throughout the presentation, you'll be able to get the answer to. So we'd like you to engage with us and let us know what you think. I'd also like you to stay tuned to the very end because we'll be giving away one thing to everyone and another thing to a special someone who's able to figure out the answer. So we will have a giveaway from Nairobi Garage for everyone. So we'd like you to stay tuned for that. But other than that, I would like to welcome Edward. We are seated in the same room, so if you do see me looking over this way every once in a while, it's because I'm looking over at Edward. But otherwise, I'd like to say Asante Sana for joining us. And you're welcome to Nairobi Garage to check out our different working spaces when you get a chance, whichever part of town you are that's closest to you. Karibu Sana. In the meantime, Edward, are you ready?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mel. Thank you for the welcome. Hey guys, thank you very much for joining us today. As you've heard, my name is Edward. And yeah, I'm looking forward to engaging with you guys. I already see some thumbs up, and I was starting to ask. I can only see some ladies, but I've seen Victor Kenneth. Thank you very much, Victor, for representing, man. Thank you. So yes, so I'll without taking too much time, I'm going to go straight into our presentation in a short while. Okay. Good. So today I'm here talking about tapping potential in the market, which is a really key topic that we're all discussing right now. We all know what's happening in the background last 1 year or so. I won't spend too much time talking about that. But what we want to do right now, or what's really going through the minds of a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of sales managers, a lot of sales teams, or wherever it is that you support a business or a company from, it's how do we grow? And that comes down to the market opportunities, because it's opportunities that give us an opportunity, that allow us to be able to grow, irrespective of whatever business we're in. So what I want to start with is I just want to start by introducing myself, taking you through sort of like what my journey has been, because a lot of the stuff that I do now is based a lot on what I've gone through. I'm trying to sort of like share stuff that I've gone through in the hope that, not everybody has to go through the same stuff, to give you a good view of that. Spent what, 22 years in business. I honestly think that from where I stand now with the experiences I have, I think that it's possible for somebody to do it in 5 years, to be able to learn those things if we share them, which would give a lot of opportunities and scale to people that are coming in the next generation. I think that's what we need to do a lot more, because everybody doesn't have to learn for 22 years to be able to do what I can do. I think people should be able to do it in shorter times. And I think that would be a big win for all of us. So spend 22 years, 6 different businesses, 3 still ongoing, three have shut down. Um, Directly on the businesses, I was an executive in 4 of those businesses, meaning that I'm day to day, I'm running them. One of the things, of course, and why I also like to talk about the ones that also didn't make it, is because I think we also need to start adapting a culture of failure, knowing that failure is actually a good thing, shutting down something when it's not working is one of the things that you should be able to do, whether you're running a business, whether you're running a consultancy, because sometimes things don't work out, market opportunities change, the problem changes, maybe you don't have, so it's very important as well to be able to understand that and be strong enough to do that. So during that same time, out of those 6 businesses I talked about, I led 3 different sales teams, from moving sales from 0 to over 100 million in less than 5 years. So in one of the companies, we did it in 3 years. So what you take out of that is consistency, that it's really important for you to be able to be consistent. One of the takeaways of that, of course, is process, which I'll be talking about later. On top of that, sort of like spent the first 8 running a textile and branding business. I'll talk about that briefly. And then another 12 running an advertising agency across East Africa. And that was sort of like the richest of experiences, because it gives me an opportunity to work across multiple sectors, some global experience as well. So both experience in Kenya, across Kenya, in the region, and globally as well. So sectors were diverse, from insurance to banking. Actually, there are more than 25 different sectors that I had an experience of hands-on working with clients during that period of time. So that's sort of like where I picked from. On top of that, of course, is both the ability to mix local, regional, and global experience, and now to be able to either teach or interact with people, bringing that together, because I think that's also very, very, very important. Sometime around 2013, 2014, I was part of a global pitching team for one of the largest communication groups in the world. So I used to travel around Europe pitching for business around, and that was quite some rich experience as well. So roughly within the last maybe like 10 years, done about 380 pitches, of which 23 were on the global stage. Yeah, so I've trained a lot of people. This is just capturing the last 10 years, but running client projects and training teams, I've trained over 8,000 people in the market, and mostly these are sales related trainings. And currently, right now, I do 2 things that are taking majority of my time, apart from bringing up family, which is more on the personal side, is I run Smart Sales, and Smart Sales has a baby called Mastering Business Growth, which is a sales program that I'll be talking about as we go on. So right now, right here where we are, I think it's important to make use of the time that we have, and I'd say that networking starts here. So maybe what you could do, Mel, what do you think? Put in your names.
Yeah, I think we can get the ball going, get people interacting with each other in the chat box. So feel free to put in your name, your company's name, or the business that you run, the name of it, and what sector you're in. If you've got social media handles that you feel like we should plug in there as well, they could feel free to do that. Let's get the chat box going, and let's get people interacting.
And the good thing about that is that, if you put in your sector, it's highly likely that as we go on, I could give you examples that are specific to your sector. And so that's why, that's also the value you get out of sharing this. That, as we go on, some of the examples that I could use are out of the sectors that you're going to mention. So what should you expect to get out of this session? These are the things that I hope you'll be able to get out of this session when we're done. Number one, understand how to identify a market opportunity by doing the following, being in touch with your customers. At the center of all this is customers. And so it's very important that, we carry that with us all the time. Next, listening to customers, understanding that, how to identify that. Understanding the market problem, which is what we're talking about here, because opportunities are about problems. And of course, most importantly, the value proposition, which is really your answer to the problem in the market, which is what you'll tell people, which is what your sales teams will use when they're talking to potential customers. And it's really the heart of business. Then the next thing that we're going to be able to do is you're going to come out with examples of market opportunities. I've tried to use examples from my own experience as well as examples that you may know from the market. So when they come up, please feel free to chat and share your own ideas or comments around those same examples. Most importantly as well is to understand what sort of skills are important for you to be able to tap market opportunities. So I have some skill sets I will share, but there are a lot more, and at least that should get you started. Finally, and most importantly, you can only do so much when it comes to taking advantage of market opportunities. So we are also going to be able to look at setting some boundaries to avoid you trying to do too much and ultimately losing it all because you're seeing too many opportunities, or you're seeing an opportunity and are not able to identify what you have and whether you can be able to turn the opportunity into a business, which is very important. Yeah. Good. So I'm going to start with a story because stories are good. I think somebody said somewhere that stories are never forgotten. So I'm going to start with a story, and this is a story around the second business that I started. The business is still existing to this day, but I'm no longer involved in it for the last. I exited the business back in 2005. So around 20 years ago, I was a co-founder. This was just straight out of university. And I was a co-founder of a textile and branding business that still exists in the industrial area today. And around exactly this time, because I remember it very clearly, we were just about to cross 100 million in annual revenues. I mean, if you compute inflation and just look at what the cost of things are now, you'd imagine, right now that would be a tiny sum, but then it was, it was a big thing. And that was the first company that I ran that crossed that US dollars 1 million, in revenue annually. So that was the first business where I was able to do that, and I was in charge of business development. So one of the major products that we used to sell was high quality textile wear. So what you see nowadays, whether it's uniforms, whether it's shirts, whether it's t-shirts, whether it's hats, for companies, for humanitarian efforts, across, that was one of our biggest products. Yeah. At that time, there were probably only three other big players in the market. And in the market here, I would want to include the whole of East Africa because that was 20 years ago. So there weren't too many big players who were bigger than us, probably 2 or 3 only. And some of them are still in business today. And sort of like, and on top of that, supplying textile at that time, to Kenyan political parties, during elections and stuff, that was also a big opportunity. Unfortunately, we specifically stayed away from that, but you can't afford to say, you can't ignore that was big business then. I understand most of the stuff comes out of China nowadays, so I guess it's no longer an opportunity here, but yeah, then, all the stuff used to be done in the country. One of the biggest projects, again, I did around that time from a corporate perspective. I remember Coke had this project called Popstars around just about a year after that. And that was one of the biggest projects we did, north of over, like 20, 30 million at that time for our business, which was a big project. And this was in East Africa, it was the whole of East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. And as we go on, so one of the things that's important to understand about this business at that time is that we were actually meeting needs of Kenya and the region as well. And I'll just show how that used to work. So a significant portion of the material that we did was moving into the neighboring countries. So, we kept the bus companies to Dar es Salaam and Kampala busy because our clients used to export this stuff to them. So a lot of the stuff used to go by bus. And as I said, we had clients also in the NGO sector. So we'd find a lot of our stuff was getting shipped to Juba, Mogadishu, Goma. So, that was a big part of the market opportunity. So what factors were driving the need? Because that's something that's important to also think about when you're thinking about a market opportunity. Branding. At that time, around 20 years ago, branding was just starting to come up as a really big thing. It was a trend now. Now branding is all over the place. But then, branding was big. Organizations have just started to start branding themselves. Across multiple sectors, everybody wanted to differentiate themselves. And that was key in how the growth of the sector was growing, and of course, growing population. If you look at just Kenya moving from the 90s into the 2000s, people were really hopeful. Globalization had just started. China, and so that's 20 years ago. That's what was happening at that time, and of course, that's just when the tech companies, even in the US, so there was a lot of hopefulness around entrepreneurship. And of course, also, you can't ignore that in Kenya at that time, we were just coming towards the end, and everybody knew that there will be a transition in government. So there's a lot of more hopefulness. I think it's always good to look at those factors that lie behind what you call a market opportunity, like what's happening in the country. That's what was happening at that time. So I think most importantly as well, not to be ignored, is the low competition in the space. There wasn't much competition. I'll give you a good example so that you just understand the context. If you go out in the market today, you'll probably buy a t-shirt at around 400 shillings, maybe even 3 something if you've got quantities. We used to sell our shirts at those time at 300 to 350. And you can imagine what the cost of stuff was at that time. So we could wrap up a shirt on costs at around 100, 110 shillings and still sell it at 300. So you can imagine what the margin was. I understand today you're probably fighting for 5 or 10 shillings per shirt. So you can imagine how profitable the businesses were in those sectors at that time. So it's also good to look at stuff like that. Yeah. So this is the first thing I want us to do. So from that story that I just shared, I want you to send us on the chart, does this market opportunity still exist today as is in the way that I've described it? And so your answer should be a yes or a no. And of course, please explain briefly. If a yes, why? And if a no, why not? Yeah? Good.
Yeah. So just to confirm and clarify with people, we're basically letting them know if they think that the textile business you sort of gave us insight into would exist as back then, right now.
Yes. Whether the opportunity still exists as is, based on what I've just described, is our opportunity still there? And remember, I explained even what was driving the opportunity and its size at that time. So I guess everyone needs to think about, does that still exist now? What has changed?
So shout out to Elaine Muigai. So Elaine says yes, but competition is high.
Ah, nice. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Definitely true. Yes, competition is definitely high.
Yeah. I would say based on, so one boy here says, I say no, because the thriving textile industry has been beaten down by supplies from China and lack of prospects by government for local production. That's just what I was thinking as well.
Yes, a very good point. In fact, on point, actually, that's part of the reason why I exited the business in 2004, 2005, is because I saw how globalization was going.
Yeah.
T-shirts from China costing half the cost, and I could not see whether there was a future in that business, and that's why I exited the business.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. It'd be good to know what anyone else thinks. If you said yes or no, please let us know in the chat box. In the meantime, people have been populating about the industries they're in, so maybe we could look at that a bit later.
Okay.
But yes, interesting that you exited that in
2005, but I started, the process started 2004, 2005, yes.
It's interesting to see that you had the foresight back then to be able to know.
Yes, and I wouldn't say that it was entirely the only reason, but clearly I could see that margins were a problem, and I wanted to exit into a new sector. Actually, that's when, given that I'd done marketing in university, I always wanted to start an advertising agency.
Yeah.
So that was also driving the decision that I wanted to go into the agency business.
Yeah. Great. So maybe we could take one question. Victor Kenneth asks, you talked about failure, and if it doesn't work, kill it.
Yes.
Kindly review that.
Kindly review meaning, I want to try and understand what he means by kindly review.
Maybe go into depth.
Go into depth. Yes. So I'll probably answer that question a bit better up ahead, but let me just say something. You see, business or opportunities are all about a problem that you're solving. And what's important, or what I hope that we can get today, is to be able to define that problem so that then you can decide whether the problem's big enough for you to solve and to turn into a business. So back in the day, and that's why I said, it took me 22 years to get here. I think that people coming after me should be able to identify this quickly, because in my time, nobody could, a session like this was not even there. Yeah. Where people would tell you about how to approach, how to develop your skill sets. We were just trial and error. We were first generation entrepreneurs. Our parents were, they were workers. Yeah. So, you've got nowhere. The internet was just nascent. So even reading, you don't have a place where you can develop this. So now you do, especially with sessions like this, where you can come and learn. So it's all about the problem you're solving and its size. Yeah. And if you identify that fast enough, because you can have a good idea, do the testing, and with time, after a few years, you realize the growth's not going the way that it's supposed to. Given your purpose and what you want to achieve, you should be able to shut down that business and transfer your skills to something else. So maybe to explain that better is, you can imagine I spent 12 years building an advertising agency, only by around year 10 to realize that the future of traditional advertising, there was no future, and to shut down my advertising agency, which was the biggest business I'd ever built. And that was a sad moment for me, but still, the point is, going ahead with that business means no prospects. So unless you can shift completely to digital, which has its own challenges, because always you have to review, what skill set do I have? So for me, my skill set was not in digital. My skill set was in business development, in sales. And so I shifted to where I had a skill set. So that sort of like explains, that's sort of like how an entrepreneur should think when you're thinking of the business. I mean, it's not going the way I want, there's not as much opportunity. If I'm looking to pivot, what skill set do I have, or what do I have access to that I can build on quickly? So just to go back to the failure comment, so that's so you've got to be able to see these opportunity. This problem is not big enough, and usually that also comes in many other ways. Profitability. When you're in a business like now, I want to give the example of a branding business, which is what I was talking about. The margins are really slim. I gave the example of t-shirts. If you're in a business like that, unless you're going to sell 1 million t-shirts a month, I mean, if you're making 10 shillings, what's the chance that you're going to build a business, be able to extract some profit, or build some wealth? Highly unlikely. So you want to look at those kind of factors, if you want to really grow. But we have different objectives in business. That's sort of like how. So I hope I've answered this question. So any other?
Not at the moment. But he does say that it's almost philosophical, right? And it can apply to other things in life. So thanks, Victor. I hope we were able to answer your question. Yes. For anyone else with questions, we've got the questions poll going, the tab, next to the chat box. So feel free to populate that with any questions, and we'll answer as we go. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, cool. So let's go ahead, and even for Victor as well, I'll still be talking about the same thing as we talk about opportunities up ahead. Yeah. So next, what we want to do is just be clear on what really is a market opportunity, and what I'm going to try and do here is I'll also give you some examples, some practical examples as we go on. So basically, a market opportunity comes in its face, meaning what you recognize is a problem in the market, that requires a solution. That's the way it comes. So for once, we have a situation where a problem is a positive word. So when you think problems in the market, they need a solution. It's a positive thing because it means that if you solve it, then you can probably have some fun doing that and as well as make some money. So market opportunities are problems in the market that require a solution. And most importantly, as well, if you push this further, that people are willing to pay for. Yeah. And of course, when you start to talk about something that people are willing to pay for, then another word comes in, which is product market fit. And that word just stands for, whether the product or service you're providing, whether it's reached a level where there's enough uptake for it to qualify to be a business, and whether that is continuous, because that's and just to go back to our earlier discussion, you see, stuff like this was not available 20 years ago. You don't know. I didn't know where you could go and read stuff like this. A lot of this stuff has come in the last maybe decade for you to understand these learnings around entrepreneurship. Before, you just got into something and you tried to work it out as you went. So that's a difference. So to obtain product market fit and have enough to build a business on. So the problem, then market fit, meaning you're seeing enough people asking, or you're reaching enough people who are partaking, and so then you develop a product or a service to meet that need. And that's sort of like what becomes. So that's just trying to just farm up on really what a market opportunity is. Yeah. So I think the key thing, or the most important thing here, because I see that a lot, especially when I'm speaking to upcoming entrepreneurs, is make sure there's enough customers consistently purchasing as it meets a need. That's really important. So if you have just a few customers, then you want to do a little bit. You want to push a little bit harder, because you can't build a business on a few customers, and I think that's really important to understand. Yeah. So what are, before we move ahead, so what are the key elements of a market opportunity? So a problem, which is also an opportunity, that the problem touches enough people, which is what we were talking about in the market fit, and sort of like a good understanding of other players in the market. So you look at the problem, and I'll give you an example up ahead, and you ask, who else is involved in this problem in any other way? That's sort of like where you want to be when you're looking at, opportunities. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So don't worry, I'll talk about the examples as we go ahead. But the one thing that I wanted us to also talk about is, what about skill sets? So there's an opportunity. So whether it's food that you're cooking because you realize that people cannot access affordable food, or it's a transport problem you're solving, or it's organic stuff that you're growing, whatever it is, you identify there's a gap and you're doing something about it, or it's digital services you're providing to small companies, whatever it is. So what skill sets do you need to be able to work an opportunity? And this is to work an opportunity, not necessarily to work an opportunity. Yeah? One, and I think most importantly, is curiosity. I think that you need to have some level of curiosity, general curiosity around stuff. This is just a general desire to understand how stuff works. And I think this is where I hear people a lot talking about our curriculum or education. Possibly we need some help here in trying to get us to be more curious in life and around things, where, to question how things work and want to learn more. And this needs to be self-driven. So it shouldn't be under pressure, or you're only doing it because you're working here currently and there's pressure for you to learn. It should be something that you carry with you wherever you go. So it can be developed by deciding to keep an open mind, not taking too many things for granted. That's really important. So that's a skill set number one. That's really handy when it comes to being able to tap into opportunities or identifying them. Yeah. So two, I think, is responsibility. And here I have a perfect example of myself. So taking accountability for your actions and your community, which is what I was talking about, that I look at the 22 years and how long it's taken me to develop the skill sets, and I say, why not 3 to 5 years for somebody else, and that's sort of like partly why we went ahead and developed this program, and we continue to develop more programs to sort of like transfer the skill set. So most market opportunities present themselves as problems faced by society, and so one should have a sense of duty to solve them. That should come as a given, that you want to solve something so that you can make life easier for yourself and for other people in your community. Yeah. So, for example, if you look at us, Smart Sales, which is the company that I run now, you know, I'm really concerned about employment and the high failure rate of businesses. Because if you just look at me alone, more than half the businesses that I started, I closed them down. And that rate's probably even higher because I've been involved in projects and I know that the rate's probably 90% going up, in terms of the businesses that shut down. So I believe that the development of my sales programs could have a positive impact in reversing this trend of failure rates. And the best example to that is just looking at the businesses I run, even the advertising agency, how long it ran for. And it's purely because I probably had better business development skills. Otherwise, it should have shut down earlier. So that's sort of like responsibility. You want to take responsibility and change something. Next is critical thinking skills. Yes, you've seen a problem, but the truth is, if you can't think through it, if you can't figure stuff out, it's really hard for you to do anything about it. This is just the ability to evaluate an issue, or a problem. If it's food, exactly. Who doesn't have food? Think through that and be able to see how you can solve it. So arrive at a conclusion. Imagine trying to analyze why so many young people in Africa are not accessing opportunities, even after they go through college or university. You need to have some skills, to analyze the data, go online, to read articles, to pick the right articles, put them together, synthesize, come up with an opinion and some conclusions. So you sort of like need to develop those, critical thinking skills to be able to do that. Yeah. Number four, and as I said, this is not entire, so you can probably dig a bit deeper and come up with more skill sets that you can develop. That work ethic, man, this is critical. I haven't seen a problem that needs solving that you can go and solve, and without the ability to focus on the work and to get it done, without losing focus and until you solve the problem, that's critical. So you need to have a work ethic around stuff so that you can be able to to follow through on the problem and whatever it is that you need to do around it so you can create a business. Yeah. So those are like the four things I thought were critical in you being able to to take to pick up on the market opportunities and do something about it. Yeah. So yeah, and just to cement that again, is majority of opportunities or problems, they require a significant amount of effort and focus so that you can solve them. So you're not doing too many things or starting something and stopping it in the middle. So you got to be able to do that. So I think sort of like one of the takeaways or one of the things that you'd walk out of this slide with is, so if you're in entrepreneurship, which has got a lot to do with problems, especially around where we are, if you're in it purely for the money, then your motives are probably wrong from the start. It's highly likely that if the money doesn't come in quickly, you're either going to give up or move on to something else before you actually solve the problem. And the best way to look at that is, I spent 12 years on one business, which is an advertising agency and charity. 12 years is a long time. That's, if you're going to live to be 70, that's probably 15% of your life. That's a long time. Yeah, cool. So next, I'm going to just, so the next thing that you want to, when you're looking at opportunities is you got to go a little bit deeper and sort of like build a profile around the customers, all the potential customers, all the people that you think that this opportunity will serve or who are affected by this problem and who may be able to do something about it, pay up, and that's where your business opportunity comes from. Yeah. So once you identify the problem opportunity, you sort of like need to segment the targeted consumer, sort of like try and understand them a little bit better. Because, as I said, you got to be able, so you can see now where the critical thinking skills are coming in and where sort of like the work ethic comes in. You got to dig in deep And this will sort of like help you to determine the extent of the problem or the opportunity, because that's where the business is. Yeah. So you want to break that down into two, just so that you're able to see clearly. And the first one is the basics, which is the hard stuff, demographics. Simple things like age, who's buying these, how old are they, the gender, education, does this anything, depending on the product, does it have anything to do with education? Because that's, these things are key. Income, you want to make sure that these guys can afford the services or the product that you're building. Otherwise, then you don't have a business. Next, occupation, what do these guys do? Because that will advise, on where they are, or what they're doing around the occupation, around the problem that you're solving. And as I said, I'll give an example. And then the next thing, of course, is the softer stuff. You want to sort of like get into their minds. And understand them a little bit better, and also look at their attitudes. How do they think? How are they here? You also have got to look at, if you're selling anything in Kenya today, you want to also generally understand the attitudes of people and what motivates people to do stuff. Where are people in their life and how do they, so that kind of stuff will help you to think through even, how you're going to approach your business. So purchasing, why do they buy it and what do they use it for? So if it's anything to do with education, and I'll use an example here just to bring something into life. Today, a few years back, I entered into a master's program. And my motivation was really different. I wanted to learn because I'm an entrepreneur, and I was going into the master's program to learn. One of the things I picked out of that class, and the program remains undone, I didn't finish it, is I realized that a lot of the people I was in class with, actually, especially when we were doing the projects together, were not there to learn. It was more about picking up on the education so you can get a promotion. So people don't go deep into stuff. So purely they do the masters because that's a document I need to be able to go back to my office and say, hey, I have this stuff. Either I can get a new job, and that mindset's very different. That means that, people are not deep into stuff. They're not deep into the research they're doing because it's just like a stamping. And that for me was a moment of, like, okay, so, people do this differently. And sort of like, that sort of like explains, imagine if you're trying to put out a product around education and you don't understand that concept, that these people they want this paper because they want to get promotions and move forward with their careers, not necessarily grow on their education. You got to understand stuff like that. Otherwise, you're going to miss the point. Yeah. So it's really important that you understand what people's motivations are. And then, of course, most importantly, what are their goals and what are the pains they go through with this problem? So that then as you're solving it, you really, really, really understand them. And maybe also the other thing that would be important to mention, which is also a skill set, not even necessarily a skill set, I think it's something that one develops, is empathy, because that also helps you to see people for things from people's perspectives. And that's really important, especially if you want to build out a career in sales or business development, that'll come in handy in understanding that stuff. So I give you a case study here to be a bit more practical. So the Mastering Business Growth Program is a program that I run, and it's got a number of parts to it for entrepreneurs, for sales managers, and for sales teams. So I have a case study here just to show you how market opportunities come and how you're able to see them. So when we started by training and mentoring entrepreneurs, of course, with their teams, so we can enable them to increase their sales capacity through developing process. And the biggest challenge I noticed with SMEs is being able to grow consistently. So big businesses, because of their focus and resources, and they understand how sales works, they can put resources behind it so they can build. But for smaller businesses, entrepreneurs don't understand that sales is a land skill, and it's something you've got to build around on and invest in. So that's why they don't get consistent sales. So you find out of 12 months, sales are fluctuating. That leads to cash flow challenges. Which, when a business is more mature, shouldn't be the case. At the beginning, it's probably okay. If a business is new, if you start a new program or stuff like that, you'll have fluctuations. But once a business is a little bit more mature with customers, you shouldn't have that same problem. So I realized that was a problem. And that's what I built this program to solve that, to teach entrepreneurs to develop sales skills and to be able so they can grow more consistently. And of course, most importantly, I believe that the lack of enough customers remains a significant cause of high business failure in Kenya today. Any research that's done out there will tell you the same, and in the region as well. So that's sort of like the problem that we're solving with our programs. So our ideal customer sort of like looks something like this. I wouldn't go so much into the detail of that, but I just want you to have a small peek into that. So entrepreneurs that are looking to grow revenues and grow their businesses, a majority of them are owner managers. So this is an interesting thing. If you ask any entrepreneur, they will tell you, I want to grow my revenues. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you will find different classes of that answer. And there are people that want to grow revenue but don't want to invest their time. Now, that's not our target audience. So as part of our qualification process, we want to remove that entrepreneur quickly because sales is a long-term game. So you want to identify an entrepreneur who's willing to invest. And so that's why I say owner manager directly involved in sales and are managing their sales team. So that's sort of like how we define it. So everybody wants to grow, but not everybody wants to invest their time in the growth. And you need to be able to differentiate that to be able to get into your ideal customer. So what we realized is that when I started to put out a lot of stuff, so I'm reasonably active on LinkedIn. It's one of our biggest lead generators. So when I was putting out my sales messages, my sales and marketing messages, I realized that we were attracting a lot of traffic of consultants. In fact, 50% of all our incoming leads were consultants asking, do you have a program to help us grow as consultants? You know, I just got off my job, I'm a HR consultant, but I don't know how to find new customers. So maybe they left their job and they had one contact, maybe wherever they were told, you know, we'll support you, but they don't know how to create new customers after that. So, you know, 50% of my leads up to this day are consultants asking, Edward, you know, can you create a program? Can you teach us how to sell? But the truth is, I didn't develop my program for consultants, and I'm usually very honest about these things. So, work in progress to divide it, you know, to develop that. But I think what I want you to see here is if you're listening to the market, then this is a market opportunity. Yeah, this is pointing to an unfulfilled need right now, which is a market opportunity, and it's a perfect example of what we're here to talk about today. So as an entrepreneur or as a sales manager or as a professional, you want to be listening to your market. Now, of course, if you don't follow data, then you can't tell it's 50%. You'll just be putting these inquiries aside and saying, that's not my customer, that's not my customer. But if you're a little bit more process driven and you're looking at data, you're going to see that this number is significantly high and maybe I need to do something about it in the future. So one of the recent observations as well is a significant number of professionals who've left employment sort of like in the past, especially during COVID, and they've transitioned into consultancy, you know, which is great, which is fantastic. You're trying to use what you already know and learn. Yeah. So if I want to qualify that market opportunity now, because that's sort of like what you want to know, is I need to ask some questions. And questions are fantastic. You know, your ability to develop good questions to understand the market are very important. So the questions I need to address so that I can review that opportunity is, you know, first of all, would they be willing to pay for that service? So people can tell you, you know, can you teach us, can you develop, but would they be willing to pay? So you got to ask them whether they'd be willing to pay. And you've also got to ask them how much they'd be willing to pay. And you've even got to push it a little bit harder, and I'll tell you something about that. You also want to determine how big this opportunity is. So if on a normal week on my LinkedIn, I have sometimes anything between 24 to nearly 50 leads, and half those leads, meaning about 25, as high as 25 sometimes, are consultants. That's already telling me that there's a big enough opportunity. Now multiply that by a week, you can see that's close to getting to anything between 60 to 100 leads a month. So that starts to tell you that this opportunity is significant enough for you to maybe start to spend some time to, you know, to see it. Now, not really to see it, but to develop it. So the next thing you want to ask is, why is there a sudden urgency to acquire sales skills? So highly likely when I talk to some of them, they say something like, you know, before COVID, they sort of like was scrapping through with a few contacts or leads they have in the market, but COVID has completely changed that. They've realized if you don't have the skills to look for customers, I can't survive. So that one or two leads you had before has probably narrowed down to one or zero because of just how the business environment is. And that's what's pushed the need for developing sales skills. Yeah. So you want to understand stuff like that. So how are this, then you want to understand something like how are these consultants, how are they addressing this skills gap? So maybe they didn't know they had a skills gap before because they were getting some business, but also that's probably also explains something around our growth mindset. Maybe they don't want to grow a lot. Some of them just want a small consistency. It shouldn't be so big. And now with the challenges we face, you have to grow either way. The option of staying small and no longer there. So you want to understand those kind of things before you invest and actually decide to build a business around it. So what needs to be done? So let's look at what needs to be done. You want to review these consultants for common characteristics. We've just come from the slide of what? Ideal customer profile. So you want to start breaking them down into sectors. Which sectors are they coming from? Are these sectors growth sectors? Because you want to grow your business on people working within growth sectors. Because then that shows you that there's a future for whatever you're building. Because if I'm training people and the sector is not growing, maybe I'll only be running the programs for a year or two before it all comes to an end. So you want to identify, you want to look at opportunities, ways of identity. So that's sort of like how you wanna approach it. So that's just an example of sort of like how I would approach an opportunity that has come into my space in the course of doing what I planned to do. So what are the ways of identifying opportunities? I think single most important, on top of the skills that we've been talking about, is just an ability to listen and learn from customers. And I can tell you that this is one of my strengths. I really listen to my customers. And not listening because you want to tell them something or so you can develop a proposal, but really to try and understand what they're going through. Because then that's the only way you can really be able to develop a value proposition or a product that they, that responds to what they face. Continuously assessing the problem you're solving in the market. And this is really important. And I'll give you an example of the Mastering Business Growth Program and how I'm continuously assessing how I'm solving the problem, which is helping me to grow the product even more in a very short period. And is this changing? So like when you started the problem you're solving, is that problem changing in terms of how the entrepreneurs are interacting or are having the problem they face in the market? Very important to continuously be able to review that. So I think most importantly and significantly right now is to really think about with whatever is happening globally and regionally and also in our communities, and given what's happening with COVID, how is COVID and its continued, it continuing to have the impact it has in our lives? How's that changing the problem, and how's changing the environment, and what the effect does that have on your business? Being able to review that consistently is extremely important, because that's completely wiping out some sectors. It's changing the food industry, it's changing the hospitality industry. And these are some of the things that you want to relate back to what you do. So for example, if my program had a significant share in the hospitality industry, I want to be able to review that for the long term, because maybe things won't even ever go back to the way they were. So you do want to be able to consistently be looking out in the market from that perspective. Of course, the economic effects and the long-term effects of that has led to gains and losses for businesses across the markets. And here I say gains as well, because there are people that are definitely benefiting from this. And what you want to do sometimes is that even if your business is not directly benefiting from like what's happening, you want to align your products or services to sectors that are thriving at this time. So you want to actually intentionally do that. Yeah. So one of the things, and this is a chance for us to interact again, is you want to share some examples in the chat of how your businesses have been affected, and sort of like also look at it from a problem perspective, not in a general way, but how the problem has continued to, to change itself now that we are nearly a year and a half post COVID, not really post, but within COVID, and sort of like how that problem is changing. If you have any comments or any questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. And as we go on, if we have some time, we have a chance to customize that or probably give you some feedback on the specific areas where you're working. Yeah.
Great. Actually, while we're at that, Victor Kenneth has asked a couple of questions. Maybe you can address. He did ask them before we went through the ideal customer profile. But the first thing he asked is, how do you find out what people are willing to pay for?
Yeah, a number of things. You ask them. That's the first place where you start. You ask them, like, are you willing to pay for this? Now, that's the first step. Not entirely accurate, because people, until they actually pay, you really don't know. And there's a small comment we developed while we used to do research in advertising. But there's also something unique about a significant number of Kenyans. I'm careful not to say all Kenyans. A significant amount of Kenyans, which is people take time. People don't want to disappoint you, even when you're carrying out research. They'll probably in most cases give you the answer that you want. So you've got to also consider that if you're doing research or you're asking people questions, that's why I said it comes from our advertising days when we're developing research. You want to structure your questions in a way to make up for that people will tell you what they want you to hear. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they mean. Yeah. So you ask them. I think you ask them, and there's a good question that we also ask, which is, have you ever done anything to try and solve this problem before? And push it a little bit further and say, did you pay for it, or what did you do to access it? And if somebody gives you an answer to indicate that they paid for it, then chances are they'd be willing to pay. So you always got to develop the questions to dig. That's why you got to be a good prober. You got to be good in questioning things, because then the truth lies in there. So it's really important that, so one, ask the question directly. If I did this, would you be willing to pay? Then scale that. Don't ask, decide how many people you're going to ask. If you get the same answer, then you're onto something good. And then now you dig a little bit deeper as you go into that. And that's sort of like what you want.
Okay. Yeah. And he also asks, additional to that, what is the best way to talk to customers so I can find out their needs? Is it cold calling? Is it talking to random strangers? What would you recommend?
Interviews. If you're doing stuff in this market of ours, Kenya, East Africa, you've got to find opportunities to talk to people live.
Okay.
You have to find somehow, because generally we're not, it's really hard. I've really seen us struggle even with online research, online surveys. You really need to develop, to create time to go talk to your customers, and specifically without the pressure of them feeling the obligation to give you a certain answer or to buy from you. So you really it needs to be like a conversation.
Hence why cold calling probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah, hence why it wouldn't work. I'll give you an example. When I'm cold calling, I still cold call all my leads personally up to this day for my programs. And one of the things that's really interesting is when you try to ask people for their time, like, can you find time to talk to me now? And you see, you have to do that because, for example, if you want people to speak to you for a certain amount of time, you need to ask them for permission to do that.
Yeah.
But most of the time, sometimes, as I said, people will tell you that even when they're in a meeting, for example. So you got to understand who you're talking to, so you can learn how to work with them the way they are. And so I would say you gotta create time, you gotta prioritize going to the market and really having a chat with people around the problems they're facing. That probably has your best answers. The truth is in there. Yeah.
Okay. So you did mention for people to share examples in the chat of how their businesses have been affected by the pandemic. You're welcome to still do so, guys, in the chat.
Yes.
One boy says, we had to close a 30-year family business because of the failing economy from 2017. And then it happened in 2020, what happened. However, a few months later, we reopened in a smaller space. But now after your talk, I think we should have done a thorough market survey.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, most definitely. You want to do that. You definitely want to. And let me qualify this a little bit. Let me qualify the word thorough, that sometimes you don't even, it doesn't even have to be, of course, depending on the business, you've got to develop some numbers. You've got to say, for example, if you have an objective of maybe reaching 1,000 customers, for example, you want to talk to a significant amount of people, 50, 100. Yeah, and in a structured way. And it doesn't mean you need to use your laptop. Even a simple notebook is enough, as long as the questions are structured in a certain way that you can be able to pick a trend, or a way in which people are answering. That's what's most important. So yes, definitely you need to think through that opportunity and how people have been affected, how they've been impacted. So yes, most definitely, and you still have time to do it. You can still do it now.
Yeah.
Because it's all about time. Even if you started a year, 2 years in, you still have time to make changes now, rather than 5 years from now when you have to go back and redo the same thing again. Yeah. So well done for recognizing that, and of course telling us that there is definitely that the program, that already our discussion is getting you to think in a certain way or review what you're doing. So that's great to hear. It's great to hear that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yes, next, ask your customers questions. So I think we already have touched on this, but it's good we can always, so questions are really the heart of business, the heart of sales. For those of us in sales or business development, we know that how important discovery and qualification of leads and customers is, and questions are the heart of this. So ask your customers questions, survey them to understand why they are still buying. So these are some of the things that you can do. And this just goes back to like the comment or the question that one boy had a short while back. Survey them to understand why they are still buying from you. Even I do that today. Why did you buy from me? And you can answer that question directly, or you can structure it differently. But we have to learn to ask things sometimes directly, without fear. And it's okay if we don't get an answer, because then that means we need to rephrase the question differently. But you'll be surprised if you do it 10 times, maybe out of 5 times, you'll get a direct answer as well, which is fantastic. Yeah. So ask them if there's anything your product or service can do better. Again, you need to ask your customers that. And what you're trying to do here is to see repeats, because repeats, one-off is okay. If one customer says something, you note it down and you keep it. But if in a month you find 4 or 5 customers who say the same thing, then it means you need to focus on that and do something about it, or probably dig a bit deeper and try to understand why they said it. Yeah. Understand other product options they have in the market. That's also very important, because you're probably going to learn something from that, or see where your competition is going to come from. Yeah. Former customers, this is important as well. So hey, the people that are not buying from you, you need to follow them up, and you need to understand, why they were purchasing your products or services before. So imagine comparing that with the ones that are still buying from you, and you want to look for anything that's different, so that you can see whether you want to learn something from that, which of course tells you something around data, that you need to be keeping customer data irrespective of how small your business is, because otherwise then you won't be able to do this. Then you want to ask them, why are they not buying from you now? You'll be surprised why customers are not buying from you. Maybe they moved, maybe they no longer have the income to purchase. You want to know these things so that you can understand your business. It's not necessarily that there was something wrong with your service or product, which is what happens when we make too much assumptions without talking to customers, which is not productive for us. Who are they purchasing now, if they are purchasing the same product or service? So you want to know. And in most cases, sometimes, as I said, you realize they're probably not buying the service, or they're buying it, or the reason they're doing it has got nothing to do with you. And that's an opportunity for you to do something about your service or product. Is there an opportunity for you? And I was just talking to a colleague yesterday about this, a colleague who was in the food business. And we were thinking about, some of the customers have moved, but have you asked them whether they would still buy from you even after they've moved? There lies an opportunity. And so you just want to be good at asking customers questions. And that becomes your basis for learning. And it becomes a mindset and a way in which you do business. whether as an entrepreneur or as a professional, in sales or business development or customer service, or whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. So, so for non-customers specifically, you also want to be talking to them because that sometimes could be a sign of a bigger opportunity that you could tap now or in the future. So that's why you want to keep tabs on people who are even not buying from you. So those are some of the questions that you can focus on doing when it comes to to looking at your opportunity. So the next thing that you also want to look at is analyzing your competitive landscape with regard to whatever you're doing or whatever business you're in. You want to keep a list that is consistent, which you review, which you structure. And as I said, structure is even a notebook. Structure is even your Google Docs. Don't think too hard. Don't spend time looking for templates from wherever. Just make it very easy and accessible as long as it's structured and you can find this stuff when you need it. Keep a list, of a structure around how you review and assess these segments so that you're able to relate back to that. Just a simple SWOT analysis. You can learn how to do a SWOT on YouTube nowadays. So, you don't have to go to class to know these things. And, you want to look at your competitors in a structured way. Yeah. Then most importantly, and I found this to be really useful, is always if you're looking at competitors, you want to know who they're working with, who are their partners, who are their suppliers, because you would find that maybe you're sourcing things expensive, maybe there's stuff you can do as well that can also help you to be competitive. So you want to understand this kind of stuff when you're looking at the competitive landscape. Who else are they working with and how do they do what they do, because there could be lessons in there for you. So you're not necessarily looking at your competition to copy what but it's to copy also how, to learn how they work, not necessarily because sometimes we're too caught up on copying and doing what somebody else is doing. Sometimes it's to learn how things can be done differently, and that's what you want to do. So, especially in this time, what you want to look out for is people that are growing really fast, even though they're small, and especially people who are using technology. You want to learn that quickly because those are the guys that are going to speed past you so quickly that you won't even see them coming. So that's really important to be on the lookout for that. How they're doing their stuff, if they're using technology. Then you also want to spend a bit of time looking at indirect factors. So these are factors that are not directly related to what you're doing, but have an effect. And stuff that's regional, especially like if you go back to the story I started with about our small, medium-sized textile and branding business, and one of you commented about this. Look at how China came so quickly, and you could today you can order your T-shirts bulk online through Alibaba from China and get the stuff here to you. You see, before there was probably 5 people between you and the supplier in China. From the importer in Mombasa who will bring the stuff in from you, from another middleman who will go and source stuff for you to import. I mean, there were so many people in between. Technology has changed all this. So it's also good to look at it from the things that are happening that have an impact on your business now and in the future. So, not having seen the real impact of globalization in China was definitely an oversight, to see how our textile sector is going to be affected. So you want to look out and also for opportunities, because maybe you're the one that's going to bring those international players that are coming. You can reach out to them and bring them into the market, and that's a business opportunity for you, rather than staying focused here on fighting, on protecting your market. Yet the products or services coming are more superior to what you're doing. Maybe that's an opportunity for you as well. And a simple thing is just like the free trade agreement in Africa right now. It's good to think about how it's going to affect business and whether there are any opportunities there, irrespective of whatever business you're doing. You want to think about such things. Other industries, you want to keep tabs on what's happening. For me, in sales, you want to keep tabs of what's happening in marketing. Sales is shared, when you look at sales, marketing, us and marketing, we sort of like we interplay. So, we're doing around the same stuff. So you want to also keep tabs of what's happening in those sectors. Consultancies as well, especially the big consulting firms, they always have an impact on what we do, because they also want to, get into your market, and they're always looking for new opportunities to grow. So you want to see what they're doing. Actually, one of the sectors that ate into aside from the digital, the Facebooks and the Twitters eating into traditional advertising, actually it was consultancies. Consultancies really ate up into the market share of traditional advertising agencies, especially globally. So, if you aren't looking at the big, Anderson, the big players, then you may have, you missed a really important opportunity to either learn or to see what was coming. So technological innovations and trends, most definitely. I've learned a lot from that. So it's really important, and of course, most importantly, regulation. You want to keep tabs on what's happening from a regulation perspective. Now with stuff like data, you're in any business where you're collecting data on people. We have a new authority. What does that mean for you? You want to look out for this kind of stuff.
Actually, on that point of data, allow me to stop you.
Yes.
So we have a question from Wamboy. Thanks, Wamboy. She said, someone called me yesterday saying I signed up for a product stroke service a few years ago from company X, but now they've moved to company Y and they've moved with my data. I felt violated. What are the rules around customer data protection? I gave company X and not Y my data, and especially didn't give the data to the employee. So in as much as you're collecting information, you're collecting feedback, you're surveying, where do you draw the line, between this is information I had from my textile and branding business?
Yes.
Do you take it with you? Are you allowed to take it with you? And when do you cross that line of now you're violating the fact that you have my data?
Yeah, that's, I won't profess to be a data expert. I'm definitely not. But I think my approach is always on integrity. That if I have something, I need to explain to you where I got it from and ask you for permission to use it. Okay. I think that's the most important thing. I think if I called one way and said, while I was working at company X, we collected this data from you, and now I'm solving this problem, and I thought that you'd be somebody who may benefit from this. Okay. Is it okay that I've called you? If you say no, then it's fine. But now let's go back. There's an integrity issue there because I've transferred, I've moved with data. And again, it depends. Was it a contact or was it data that was used in doing, that was collected for a certain purpose? Because that's different. There's a difference between a contact and data that was in a system for a certain purpose. So you've got to be able to look at it, as I said, from a point of integrity.
Integrity and intent as
well. And intent as well. What am I using this to do? So I actually just wrote a post last week, which was one of our most popular posts, and it was around sales. And let me just talk about it now. It was about how, especially in sales managers, one of the biggest things I'm hearing entrepreneurs I'm training is their frustrations when they employ sales managers or sales teams. And the biggest currency nowadays seems to be, I can bring my customer list to you and I use that to negotiate for a salary. And it's such a crooked way of doing things, and it's so short-term and so transactional. And interestingly, companies are also promoting it as well. So now, if somebody comes in and they've got a list of clients, companies are actually using that. And I'm saying a few companies. I don't want to say, I don't think all companies are doing this, but I think there are a few companies doing this. Even from the comments I've been getting, it's people saying, I've been through this, a company has asked me, and personally, I had the same experience once while negotiating a partnership. One of the companies that approached me to do a partnership with them. And somebody in the meeting asked, by the way, given that you've worked with that other company, can you come with a database of what you're doing? And I flatly said, if this discussion is around the database, I'm sorry, this is not for me, And these things, and so you can see that's a full session meeting where there's top management and somebody has the audacity to ask something like that. So there you go, back to Wambui. It's wrong. I can't go into detail because I'm not qualified to talk about data and the new law, but I think we really need to be careful about this. And as I said, if you approach it from an integrity perspective, chances you're going to get the majority of it right. But of course, ultimately, you need to lean back on the law. You need to lean back on the law and be able to also pull from there. But I think it's wrong. It's definitely, and we know what's happening with our phone numbers, when we visit buildings and you get SMSs from different, so this is stuff that we need to start caring about. I know there are also a number of startups that are coming into, I think I saw one find the other day where they're working with data. Kenyan data is sort of like either based in India or the US, and you don't know whether this is being shared around and who it's being sold to. So we've got to start being a little bit more, we've got to demand maybe like India, that companies working in Kenya with data, all the data has got to be based in the country. And if you want to use it outside, you've got to ask for permission. So we've got to have basic stuff like this.
Yeah, because it goes back to the point that you mentioned about what can indirectly influence your business, right? Or what indirect factors you don't have access to. Regulation, right? Data protection. If they wake up one morning and the law changes and is very strict on that, so business is highly dependent on people crossing over with, their customer lists or contact lists. That may pose a huge threat to that business's survival.
Yes, and the truth of the matter is that given that we're still a growing sector or economy, what we also want to do is, listen, data is our asset. Part of what's going to power the growth of Kenya or other African countries is our data, is me. My economic power, my spend, majority of it needs to be transferred to you, to all the guys listening to us here, the Kenyans and the Africans. If a lot of that value goes outside our region, that's a loss. Because what's going to power our growth? If it's not, if I earn today, you should be earning from me, and Wamboi should earn from me, and Vincent should earn from me, and that's how it's supposed to be. If somebody in China is using that data and taking a part of that money, literally, indirectly, they're stealing from us. And we need to be cognizant of such things, and it's as simple as that. So good, thanks. Some good questions there. Thank you, guys. I'm also learning as I go. So how to tap into opportunities. So I think we've talked about identifying opportunities. Good idea, what on the potential. Reviewing your capabilities to execute an opportunity, and this is sort of like the stuff that I want to close out this on, so that you can turn it into a business. You need to sort of like do a needs analysis of yourself, and I'm going to share a practical example of how I went about the process of starting the Mastering Business Growth Program from opportunity. So you want to ask yourselves, do you have the skills for what you want to do? Or do you have access to the skills? So those are some of the questions that you want to ask yourselves. Then next, you want to ask yourself, do you have the resources to develop and execute this idea? So again, remember we talked about the skill sets of being able to analyze something. You want to ask yourself, do you have the capabilities for you to be able to execute this? Then, most importantly, you want to ask yourself, can you provide this product or service consistently to meet the need? These are questions you have to ask yourself. You don't want to ask yourself these questions when you're already providing a service, because it might be a bit late for that, So the answer to these questions should enable you to decide whether to seize the opportunity by yourself or through some form of partnership, because that's also very important. We have to move away from the culture and the mindset that you've got to own everything and you've got to do everything yourself. Because if you don't get it done, that means it's an opportunity lost, not only most importantly for you and for other people as well. So you've got to be able to do it, even if you're only taking a part of it. An opportunity is an opportunity. It's nothing if it's not utilized, or it's not taken advantage of. So here's the needs analysis of what I did when I was starting the program. So what was my goal? What was there? Or enough, entrepreneurs lack the skills required to consistently grow. So I wanted to train them. That was a goal, What would I need? So this is sort of like how I thought about it. So I needed a trainer. Luckily for me, I'd spent all this time as a trainer. So yes, I will get other people to collaborate with, but to start with, it's only me that's required right now. So yes, I can execute. Curriculum. So I need a curriculum. So I'd spent the last 2 years developing curriculum. So number one, in a way, I'd sort of like planned for this. But on top of that, I actually went out and partnered with a curriculum developer to help me to work on the curriculum, so that, I sort of like, that's an area I felt I needed to work with somebody else. Number three, training rooms. Hey, Nairobi Garage. Here we are again doing something together. So that's part of the reason why I'm with Nairobi Garage. It's part of the reason that I work here, and they also make it easier for me to execute my idea. Look at the space they're giving me now to speak to you, to all of you. That's part of the partnership. So there you go. Sales and marketing. Ah, that's just myself. If you follow me on LinkedIn, Edward Ndegwa, you will see that I do quite a bit of work there, and I also have a small digital marketing team that I work with that supports me as well. Technology-wise, yes, there you go again. I've got these fantastic guys at Rubani Picks. They are also Nairobi Garage members. I actually met them at Nairobi Garage. So thank you, Nairobi Garage, for bringing us together. And streaming. So they help me in both doing my production and my streaming because I also have virtual classes that I'm running, targeted at mostly the rest of Africa, East Africa, and people who are not based in Nairobi. And of course, I use Zoom for my virtual classes. So these are sort of like the things I need to do what I do. And then I have extensive, of course, referrals across the years, the 20 years I have. And I also use other networks, like I'm a member of BNI, which is just a network of small business owners who come together every week. And I get a lot of referrals for my classes for that. So sort of like this helps you to see the need for what I'm doing and sort of like how I broke it down, how I looked at it to decide I can do it, and these are the resources. And of course, most importantly as well, and do I have the cash, to do this stuff? For now, I'm still able to do that, so I don't have any external funding. The only thing I do is I'm very tough with my terms because my customers are the ones that pay me, so I can be able to afford Nairobi Garage, pay my team. So I've got to be tougher on collection. So this is one of the things that I have to communicate to whoever is coming to my program that we don't get loans to run the program. You got to pay for it because that's how we run our programs. Yeah, that's very important to recognize that. So here I'm just going to quickly talk because we're coming towards the rear end of our session to do a SWOT on the skills you have. So what you've seen is an example of a case where I had the skills, but maybe I didn't have the skills and I still thought there was a market opportunity. How would I have thought about this? You want to consider, so maybe I would have had to look for somebody who's good in sales to partner with them. A business risk, but necessary if I want to go after the opportunity, yeah? So this happens if you don't have all the resources. That's part of the reason why people have a good idea, they develop it, and they fundraise so they can partner with somebody to give them the resources so they can run the idea. That's the reason why they do that, Or in some cases, you already have an idea and there are other people or players in the market. You can reach out to an existing business and say, this is what I do. And it's different from what you do. I have a feeling it could bring even more customers to your shop. Can you give me a space on the side? I do this, and whatever the revenue I generate, you share. So you have a chance to, they have customers walking in, you try out your product free for you to have access to customers, you share the profits with them, and if it doesn't work, 6 months, you shut it down and move on, and everybody's learned. So there are different ways you can do this. And as well as consider international partners, where you can write proposals to guys and tell them, I want to do this in Kenya. Would you be interested to support me? As long as you pitch it well. So in the case of fundraising, so I think as well, here on the side, sales training done well, is I wanted to say that if you're running a business today and you've got salespeople, one of the best ways to tap into market opportunities is to create a process where your salespeople bring a lot of the feedback loop back into the business. What are customers saying? That's probably the best way to take advantage of opportunities. But you've got to be able to create a process and a way to document it and a way to, pack the data so that you can see any trends or anything that you need to do. So this is specifically to that. So you probably need to be a little bit process driven, have some process around that, be able to collect some data, and you're actively listening. So you have sessions where you're saying, what are our customers saying? Any trends, so that you can be able to respond to that. Yeah. And most importantly, you need to be agile. So here we're going to, I've just remembered that we have a question here, and yeah.
Yeah, so we do have a poll going on. I can see that most people have populated it, but if you haven't, just go over to the poll section on the right-hand side of your screen. We basically asked you, where do you shop? So before we get into this case study, which is wrapping up this workshop, if you could just go ahead and populate that and let us know if you are in Kenya, where do you shop? Is it Naivas? Is it Carrefour? Is it Quick Mart, Clean Shelf, or other? So if there's any supermarkets that we sort of didn't remember to include, just maybe let us know in the chat. I've just realized I didn't put in Chandarana.
Okay.
So if anyone is a Food Plus person, you can pop other and let us know in the chat. But whatever information we get out of this, will help us understand the case study a little bit better. So this is just bringing it back and giving us more practical examples as to what Edward has been talking to us about. So yeah,
okay, fantastic. So what I did is the team and I, we developed a simple case study around something that we interact with every day, which is supermarkets. And we wanted to just break down and help us to see, for a company like Carrefour, in 5 years, these guys have moved from a business that was not in Kenya to nearly the market leader. And I mean, you even tend to think they must have been really lucky. And so we tried to break down exactly what happened to just help you to visualize or practically see a market opportunity and how different people take advantage of it depending on how they go, they think through it. So these guys, 2016, they launched, Initially, I think initially, based on what I recently heard, is actually they were coming to start at Two Rivers, but I think maybe the construction was taking long, or so. This is unconfirmed, please note. I didn't work on any project with them. So they ended up opening at the hub during that time, so they had 2 branches. And interestingly, around that same time in the local market, I was working on projects in 2014, 2015. So already in the market, there were stories around declines around Uchumi, around Nakumat. So the market knew, market players knew, and Tuskies had started struggling as well. I remember I was running a project at that time, and there was mamas from suppliers. They solved it after, but I'm sure people in the sector know. So their fall definitely leading to an increase of branches being available in strategic malls. Otherwise these spaces would never have been available, and these spaces would have come with certain requirements. The landlords would have been a lot tougher. You have to pay us this amount of goodwill and this amount of commitment, and I mean those terms used to be really tough. So you can imagine where the landlords were with the Nakumat thing. The landlords must have been at a different space. First of all, and as I said, this is unconfirmed. They're probably thinking, if you're a landlord, I don't want any Kenyan company again. I wish I can get myself a multinational that can pay. That's probably what's going through a landlord. You don't blame them, do you?
No.
You don't. Because, he probably has a loan he needs to pay back as well. And these are his anchor clients. So you're probably, it's good to look at the back end, like what drove something. So unconfirmed reports were that they were even able to negotiate lower rental terms as landlords were desperate for good tenants. In fact, as I said before, it's unconfirmed. These guys actually paid based on sales. That's never happened in Kenya before. So they don't pay you rent, they pay based on sales, based on the sales they make. So you benefit a lot. If they sell a lot, if they don't sell a lot, then you get paid less. You can't imagine, I can promise you that must have been very difficult to negotiate at that time. So recall initially that if you look at these hypermarkets in Junction, Galleria, TRM, these guys, they started with like 1 floor. So they only were selling at 1 floor and not the 2 or 3 floors that the previous supermarkets were running. So the spaces were actually empty. So they were definitely not paying rent for the other areas. So they could negotiate. I mean, those were hard bargains. So it's really good to look at that from a perspective of opportunity rather than look at, these guys were just quickly grew, now look at where. It's good to look at the parts that were there that made them take advantage of the opportunity. If those parts weren't there, maybe the story would be different. Yeah. So and let's also look at Choppies, which was launching at the same time and wasn't as lucky. And a good example is I frequent in areas around Ongata, so I know how powerful the Uchumi at Masai Mall was. So when that Uchumi closed down, Choppies went there, and the story was different for Choppies. Customers never came back because other supermarkets had come into the area, and so Choppies shut down, and they may have closed for other reasons, but that supermarket never pulled back the customers that had left. And so it's good to look at the context of that example as compared to the one at Junction. As an entrepreneur, you want to think about such things. As a sales professional, you want to think, Carrefour was only able to respond to these opportunities the way they did because they were in the market. Imagine if Carrefour was seated in Dubai or France. Do you think they could have been able to do that without being in the market? No, they wouldn't. So it's also important, and most importantly, to have the resources to roll out quickly when they identified that there was an opportunity. So one, they tested the big malls using a smaller space. They were able to see how customers are coming and the products customers want. That enabled them to expand. They didn't have to put in too much money, which then they probably made a request to their HQ and said, hey, there's a real opportunity here. Can you please send down the money?
Yeah, and I think it's a classic example of right place at the right time. Right place in the sense of you were in Kenya when all these other supermarkets were going down and getting a bad reputation. And then right time in that they had already done their testing and all in other regions, in other countries, and were just able to maybe replicate or do a little bit of adaptation to the Kenyan market. Yeah.
So all those things come into play. I just want to also, as we come to a close, I'll just talk about this quickly. So one of the things I also wanted to bring another example of a market opportunity. So we started our programs talking about focusing on entrepreneurs, coming to our classes and virtual classes. So as we were doing this, we started seeing a bigger kind of customer, so a bigger medium-sized entrepreneur who tells us, you know what, I really like the program, but I don't want to come and do it with other entrepreneurs. I want you to come to my premise and train me and my team in my premise, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more from that. And that one opportunity has become our biggest product in the last, we've only had it for 1.5 months. And we already have enough customers until August. And this sort of like also helps you to understand the opportunity of listening to customers. We actually did develop it. The customers, as we're talking, and as I told you about that, I always call my customers. You find entrepreneurs that are saying to you, what if I wanted you to come to me? What did you charge me for that? And we created a product around that. And it's becoming one of our fastest growing at this time. These entrepreneurs are bigger, they pay better because they have more money. And so it's really good, and I just go back to the skill set, I go back to what you need to focus on having as you're doing your business, because you can see how it's morphing itself. And all the resources to run that new product, we have them.
So what's this one called?
It's a customized program.
Okay,
so it's a customized mastering business growth program.
Customized.
And we go, it's customized
to
specific sectors. So there you go. So
all right. So I've got one more question. Yes. Someone had mentioned about so how do you find out the suppliers of your competitors?
Yes.
Do you befriend employees?
How do you find out the suppliers
of your competitors?
I think that if you're interested, if you ask, you'll find them.
Yeah.
I'm a bit worried about when you say, do you befriend? It sounds like, it's some spy thing that you're doing. No, I think that you just have to be upfront about finding these things. I want to know more. And I think as long as you're looking for it, you're going to find it. And if it's part of what you do, you just reach out.
Yeah.
And if you're in a sector, you'll always find them.
Yeah.
And nothing stops you from going to ask. Sometimes you may not get the answers you want, but as long as you do it consistently, I've always found it to work.
Okay. Okay. At the end of the day, it was integrity and integrity.
That's really important. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gladys asks. We're just about to wrap up, but Gladys is asking, what is the difference between growth and development?
Growth and development. Growth and development. I guess context is important here. Growth, from my perspective, is just what I'd refer as more natural, how I grow based on learning, whether physical or mental. Development, it depends. It sounds like it's more
improving on what already exists.
Improving, maybe less natural, meaning it's driven, it's created.
Yeah.
That's the way I understand it, but I think context is important.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the way I look at it.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we're getting to the tail end of this workshop. Edward is going to run a quick video and show us a video that talks a little bit about his program that he runs. So I would like you all to stay tuned for this bit. It's going to be on for about 3 minutes. Because we'll be asking a question after this and there will be a giveaway. So I hope your fingers are ready to type in the chat box as quickly as possible when we ask the question right after this video.
What's the Mastering Business Growth Program? This is a program where we are going to teach entrepreneurs key skills that are important in them being able to manage their business and to grow more consistently. It's a 6-module program, and this program is developed right here in Kenya by myself, working with a few people within the company, looking at the experiences that we've gone through, working across sectors. And what we've done is we want to bring all the learnings package them into a curriculum which is very, very practical, and we're bringing it to entrepreneurs.
I think if you want to scale up in business, you have to get some kind of training and see what other people are doing.
The reason we signed up for this particular program is because we want to go to the next level in terms of building our company and in terms of sales. So we basically want to get more knowledge and more skill in terms of building a sales team.
The reason why I joined Mastering and Business Growth Program, it was shared with me by a friend of mine, and I found it very important for me to join because of where I am at right now with my business. I'm looking to grow my business and take it to the next level. So I thought this would be a nice program for me, and not just to equip me, but also to help me in the next step that I want to go, so that when I'm having people under me, then I'll be able to lead them and guide them in the right direction.
With this, I knew this is a real deal for me, so that I may be able to make sure my company, Bab Security, is able to get more sales, and also I'm able to get more knowledge on how to deal with my sales team.
My key takeaways from this program have been having to document the process for sales. I have realized that for my business to scale, I have to have enough data to make decisions for my business. Therefore, for me and my team, we have to sit down and put down each and every data, each and every information, each and every process that we go through for us to be able to scale in our business. For anyone out there, any entrepreneur who would like to take this program for Mastering in Business Growth, I would say you are already late. Why? Because this is a program that helps you to scale your business. And for every entrepreneur out there, their main responsibility is to make sure that their business grows. So how do you do this? It's for you to increase your sales. Therefore, the skills that are being taught in this class is something that every business owner should be able to embrace. Therefore, for everyone who is out there doing business, anyone thinking to do business, this is a place to be.
All right, great. Thank you very much for that, Edward. Yeah, so as we had mentioned, we will have a little bit of a giveaway right now. So just a quick one in the chat box. I hope everyone's ready. So maybe you can give me thumbs up if you're ready for the question. If you can hear me clearly as well. Yes, great. So the question is, what is the name of the program that Smart Sales runs? What's the name of the program that Smart Sales runs? So if you can just quickly type that in. It's gonna be tight. It's gonna be tight. The first person that pops up with the right answer, what is the name of the training program that Smart Sales runs? Anyone? I think people are going back to check information somewhere. Anyone at all? Just feel free to populate the chat box. But in the meantime, I want to say a very big thank you to everyone that took time to attend this. Gladys, no, try again, please. Not business leadership. What's the name of the program that Smart Sales runs? We're giving this away to just one person. Just one person. Anyone can answer. Yes, anyone can answer. Go for it. But yeah, I just want to say thank you very much, Edward, for your time. There we go. Simone has it. It's Mastering Business Growth. So yes, you can contact Edward via his socials. As he said, he's very active on LinkedIn. But otherwise, Smart Sales, KE, on LinkedIn, on Instagram as well.
On LinkedIn, I mostly use, so we have the company handles as well, but Edward Ndegwa. In fact, my customers call me Mwalimu wa Sales, and I'm using it nowadays. So yeah, it's easy to find me. And yeah, come, let's share, let's learn together. Okay,
Mwalimu wa Sales it is. That's what I'll be calling you from now on. But yeah, thank you very much. Just a quick reminder that we'll be sending out a newsletter with all the information on this particular workshop. So if you get that email, it also means you're entitled to a free day pass. So a day pass allows you to work from any of our spaces and to really just test the product that we have out there, which is obviously functional and flexible working spaces. So we look forward to seeing you all. Simone will be sending you over a message with your gift. But otherwise, thank you very much for tuning into this. We wish you a wonderful week. And from Edward and myself, Asante Sana for your time. And yeah, his link is, Maxwell has just posted the link as well, so people can follow you on there. But thank you very much. Thanks for the insight. That was really, really mind-opening.
Okay, Sasawa, cool. Hey, thanks. Thank you very much. That was really good. Thanks, guys. That was fantastic.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.